Hey, real quick, I wanted to respond to a video I saw on the other platform, which I responded to on that platform, but not this platform. And I feel like it's a good video to respond to. So let's just jump right in.
The cringiest trend that has to be around right now is deconstruction accounts. And I'm talking people who have deconstructed years ago, come back and are like relaying their findings. I'm talking about people who have like zero theological, doctrinal, philosophical understanding when it comes to Christendom.
Okay, don't worry, he clarified it. He's not talking about people who come back and stay Christians. He's only talking about the ones who actually left and don't want to be part of Christianity anymore. Those are the only ones who are cringe, apparently.
And then they go on and they document their journey asking the most basic questions about the faith.
To me, this is a very common response I get from Christians of like, there's no way that you understand the religion and reject it or aren't convinced of it. You just haven't learned the right thing yet. You haven't read the right thing yet. You haven't heard the right argument yet. You haven't read the Bible enough. They never accept somebody like knowing enough to know if they are convinced of it or not, or if they want to be a part of that thing or not. It's like an easy way to avoid any kind of legitimacy somebody might have for not being convinced or leaving in general. There's a reason that these questions are basic. They're big questions that a lot of us feel like don't have good answers to them. That doesn't mean we're stupid or unintelligent for asking them. That means that we don't find the Christian answer to them to be reasonable. It doesn't make sense to us, or it still doesn't convince us that it makes sense. People say that kind of as if it's an own, as if just because they give a answer in general, answer period, that should be enough. But just because you give an answer for something doesn't mean that the answer makes sense or can be proven or anything like that. For example, somebody could tell me a very intense conspiracy theory they believe, and I could be like, hey, why do you believe that? Or what makes you think that? And they could give me an answer. Does that mean that that answer is, just because they gave me an answer, that answer is going to make sense? Or that answer is going to convince me of something? No, that's not what that means.
We get it. You grow up in some fundamentalist, evangelical, really rigid 300-person church community.
Calling evangelicalism basically a 300-person church is insane. Considering I feel like evangelicals are running the entire country right now. Most of the Christian nationalists in office right now are evangelicals. They are like the head of the Christian nationalist movement and started with the moral majority in the 70s. It changed everything when the moral majority started and evangelicals started getting involved in politics. Their movements have changed so much in our politics and our government and our laws. So acting confused as to why so many people talk about evangelicalism feels like I don't know if he's just like rejecting all of those aspects of it or he genuinely doesn't know, but it's almost kind of laughable considering everything going on right now. Like, why would people be talking about evangelicalism so much? Because a lot of us are impacted by it. Some people are impacted by it every single day. Every single day. So it's weird to make it seem like this one-off niche group. I think there's like 78 million evangelicals in the United States. I think they're like about 20% of the population. That's not niche. That's not a 300-person church. That's a big deal. And I would argue they are the most influential Christian group in the United States. And we have seen that in history. We're seeing that now. Hopefully we don't see it in the future. But yeah, it's wild to act like you're confused why people are talking about those type of Christians specifically.
And you are asking questions that they would never allowed you to ask.
I found this funny because actually a lot of us were allowed to ask questions. We were allowed to ask questions in the way where it was okay to ask questions if you came back to the same conclusion. And it's funny, he does exactly that at the beginning of this video where he goes, hey, I think deconstruction content is super cringe. Except if you're one of those people who like question, leave, and then come back. Like, I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about the people who leave Christianity. They're super cringe. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're allowed to question, but it doesn't feel sincere or genuine to a lot of us because you're only allowed to question to a certain extent. And that extent can't lead to you leaving, or else that's the wrong conclusion. That's the wrong choice. So it's frustrating because when they say you can question, this guy's acting like it's okay to question. A lot of Christians act like it's okay to question. But what you find out is it's really only okay if you come to the conclusion they want you to come to. So my question is it really allowing people to question? I don't think that's genuinely allowing people true curiosity and true questioning, because that would mean that they could possibly come out of it with a different outcome than you. And if you're not okay with that, I don't think you're okay with them actually questioning anything.
Hey, guess what? Penal substitutionary atonement? You have a problem with that? You have a problem with Christ being punished by the Father for our sin? Other Christians do too, okay? You have a problem with an eternal hell? Yeah, other Christians do too. They're still Christian.
I don't really know why he threw this in there saying like, yeah, some Christians have problems with like some issues within their own religion. I've never heard anybody argue that they don't. I feel like that's like the most logical conclusion, because a lot of us have been there where we were in this in-between phase of being a Christian, having issues with the religion, but still being a part of it. So I'm not sure why he added that. Like, a lot of ex-Christians are aware that there's a possibility that you can have these questions or have these concerns and still be a part of it. We're aware of that. A lot of us were that for a certain amount of time. I was that for years because it was a very slow burn. So I'm not exactly sure why he added that. It's just that a lot of us, for like a lot of these questions or concerns or whatever, they are the reason we are no longer convinced, which a lot of us, like, I don't think we can control that. Like, I think there are things that either convince us or don't convince us, and we don't have full control over that. That's just like not really how our brains work. Or there are moral things about the religion that people aren't willing to accept, and then they walk away because they don't feel like that's acceptable. He mentioned hell, and like how if you have a real problem with eternal hell as a Christian, why are you a Christian though? Because then you are worshiping an evil God. Like, if you think that's bad, if you think that's immoral, if you think that's unjust, then it kind of like destroys the entire thing, and it doesn't make sense to be a part of it anymore, even if you believe it's real, because it's like, but you don't believe your God is good then. You don't believe your God is just or merciful or whatever. I don't know. I'm not saying, like, obviously this happens a lot and people can have problems. I mean, it's part of a lot of people's deconstruction process, but, yeah, to me, it would be weird to be like, yeah, eternal hell is actually awful, but like, oh well, like, all right. And I know that feeling because I think that I did it before, and it's hard. Sometimes I think I don't account for the cognitive dissonance that goes on, and I should, because I remember being there. Just being out of it, I think we forget how we dealt with those things, because I know I forget. And now I like look back and I'm like, what the hell? Pun intended.
And the posture and the attitude that makes no sense to me is coming on here and going, oh, and by the way, if you haven't answered this, if any Christian wants to answer this, it's all mental gymnastics at the end of the day. Where did you earn this arrogance from? This is unearned arrogance. You are asking questions I asked. I'm 26 right now. You are asking questions I asked at 12 and figured out at 16. Like, you're in your mid-20s to 30s. What are you doing?
So I get that maybe he would be offended as to why deconstructionists, ex-Christians call apologetics mental gymnastics, but I feel like we have a real reason for doing so. The reason is typically a person would, let's say they look into a topic, they gain the information, and then with that information, they decide what the conclusion is. Christian apologetics is the opposite. They're starting with the conclusion, and to them, they can only get to this conclusion because that's how they stay a Christian. They want to stay a Christian. They want to defend their faith, whatever it might be. So no matter what information they get, it needs to be consistent with the conclusion they started with. So that turns into a lot of mental gymnastics, because there are times where you have to defy logic and reason because you have to get to the conclusion. Like, that's the problem was starting with the conclusion. For example, like a lot of people, the conclusion is the Bible is univocal, right? A lot of like fundamentalist evangelicals have this view. The Bible is quite obviously not univocal. There are a lot of things contradicting each other. There are things that obviously didn't happen. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, because, if you're indoctrinated to it, it's not obvious, but you know what I'm saying. There are so many things in the Bible that contradict each other that you have to do a crazy amount of mental gymnastics to get to the same conclusion, that the Bible is univocal, even though it isn't. So we see a lot of crazy reasoning. An example of this is how Judas dies in the Bible. It gives two different accounts of how he dies. One, he hangs himself. Two, he falls headlong into a rock and his guts spill out. And I have legitimately heard, this is the people who need it to be univocal, their reasoning for this. Judas hung himself by a cliff, and then the rope broke, and somehow he defying gravity, and he just went like this and hit a rock. Like his whole body flipped the other way and hit a rock, and then his guts spilled out. I remember when I read that apologetic take, I was still a Christian, and my jaw was on the floor. I was like, there's literally no way. Actually, the first answer was worse than that. It was like, oh, he did hang himself in a field, and then there wasn't even a cliff, and then his body went like this and hit a rock headlong. It was crazy. That's what I mean, but that's what a lot of us mean by mental gymnastics, because what do you mean that's like an explanation you're giving me? That is crazy work. And it was pretty wild to me that this creator was like, where are you getting your arrogance from? He keeps saying again and again and again throughout this video, I answered these questions when I was 16. These people are full-grown adults. They're in their 20s, they're in their 30s, and they can't figure it out. I figured all of this out when I was 13 to 16. That comes off as a little egotistical, a little arrogant to me, just because people don't agree with you, and just because people don't accept the apologetic answers that you accepted at 16, you're essentially alluding to the fact that everybody else who doesn't accept those Christian answers are stupid. They're unintelligent. And they're just like so much dumber than you were at age like 13. It's a really, really wild thing to say to people. And if you ask me, that arrogance is unearned.
And then you're going on TikTok and Instagram, and you're going, hey, all of my PhD TikTok, Instagram followers that don't exist, please help me. I need someone to, and it's a full glaze and echo chamber in the comments. It's like, yeah, those Christians, they never are able to answer this. That's why they don't talk about this.
I genuinely don't know what he was trying to say in this part. I'm being so serious. I don't know what he's saying. Is he saying that deconstructionists think that a bunch of people with PhDs are following them? Like, I don't understand what he's trying to say here, so I just have to move on, because I don't understand it. And then he talks about an echo chamber as if Christians don't also live in their echo chamber. That's like what the church is. An echo chamber. Some of that is normal. I mean, that's like people like being around their communities. Obviously, too much of that leads to bad things, right? Like you should always get outside perspectives or like talk to people of different viewpoints, if it's like reasonable. But yeah, I feel like acting like only these people have these echo chambers is ridiculous.
Not the crowds that I roll in. My friends are scholars at universities. My friends are people with connections to some of the greatest minds putting out the most contemporary literature on these topics. I got people who I talk to on a regular basis like that.
Guys, he knows some of the greatest minds on this planet. I don't understand why he put this in here. He is going on about like how he just surrounds himself with literally the greatest minds on earth. And so they agree with him, therefore he's right and you're wrong. What? What? And it's like, you could make the same argument. You could point to different first of all, you can make the same argument. I could just say, yeah, me too. I'm also friends with the greatest minds. Much greater than your minds. The greatest minds. I have the greatest minds surrounding me. and you can't prove me wrong. Like, it does absolutely nothing. And it's also like you could point to other scholars who disagree with his scholar friends, and you could point to like educated people who are atheist. So I don't understand the point in doing this.
And guess what we think about this whole deconstruct? We don't care. We don't think there's anything going on there.
Okay, good to know. You and the greatest minds on earth do not care. But that's good. That's probably good that you don't care and feel whatever about it, because the content isn't for you. Like, I've never like made content and been like, I'm making this one for like the Christians who feel very solidified in their faith. I've never thought that. Not a single time have I been like, I really hope they care about this. Like, it's never been my targeted audience. Like, and I feel like that's very obvious that the targeted audience is not them. I know this comes from a place of like being defensive. I'm repeating a lot of my points I made on my other platform, but I get that this comes from a place of being defensive because like people's religion is so strongly tied to their identity. So I do understand the defensiveness. But yeah, it's kind of like no harm, no foul. You don't care about this. That's good. I don't care what you think about this either. Now, I am responding to this because I feel like there are good things to talk about here. That's why I respond to videos. But I don't need him to care, and I hope he understands that a lot of deconstructionists don't care if he cares. They don't need you to care. And here he goes again about, it's so crazy to me that he's calling everybody else arrogant. And here he goes again saying like, he's so embarrassed for these people. These people are so cringe or so embarrassing. They're so stupid. I figured this out at 16. And then he accuses anybody who has this viewpoint as somebody who's never picked up a book.
Jared, could you read number 23 for the class?
No, I cannot.
What up? I'm Jared, I'm 19, and I never fucking learned how to read.
Okay. That seems a little irrational to me. Again, I know it's coming from a place of defensiveness, but like, there's no basis for you saying that. There's absolutely none. And again, you could like point to a scholar, you could point to a very educated person who doesn't believe, and then be like, what about them? They read books. Like, and also, what are you gonna say? What am I gonna say? Nuh-uh, I've read books. Like, if you want to claim I've never read a book, I go for it. I guess if you feel like that helps build up your argument, you can do that, but I don't think it does in the long run. I actually feel like it discredits you a little bit, because why are you accusing people of never reading a book? It doesn't make any sense.
Mass followings from these kinds of things. It's frankly, I get secondhand embarrassment, because that's like, listen, if you just like left the internet, opened some books, dedicated yourself to like a 5+ year study on any one of these topics that you find to be so problematic by merely asking questions that no one will ask, you'd be in a much different spot.
I'm confused why we have to dedicate 5 years of our lives to every single one of these topics. Sorry, I ain't got that kind of time. I'm not doing that. Like, is that what Christianity requires though? Like, don't get me wrong, I have looked into a lot of things, spent a lot of time on it, obviously, but does Christianity require you to study each of these like questions for 5 years for you to understand it? That's what God requires? That's crazy to me personally. And it's not about asking questions nobody will ask, but in your circles and communities, sometimes they are questions that nobody will ask, because they have grown up in a religious community where they don't take well to those kind of questions. They don't take well to you coming to a different conclusion or whatever it might be. So for a lot of people, that's how they feel. Like, they can't ask these questions in other spaces. That's exactly how I felt. That's why I made my original account, is because I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody about it, and I couldn't be honest about what I was thinking and what I was asking questions about.
But I don't know who's hyping these people up. This is not how research is ever done in any, like, if you were to go into any academic field, any STEM field, you don't do research like this. It's really, really strange. But when it comes to religion, hey, let's just all put our minds, Jim say, check your ego at the door. Let's just put our minds at the door.
I don't know where this idea is coming from that the reason for these accounts is academic research. I have no idea where he got this from or why he thinks that. Like, can you integrate that into what you're talking about? Yeah, sure. I don't think anyone is claiming that their Deconstruction ex-Christian account is purely like academic research. I don't know. I don't understand that part. Again, bringing up the ego of other people while he consistently alluded to the fact that everyone who leaves Christianity and doesn't accept the right Christian answer is an idiot and has never read a book. They're not educated. They can't understand anything. And he was smarter than us when he was 12. Like, I don't know. Calling other people arrogant and then saying all of that in one video is a pretty wild thing to me. And then he says something like, check your brain at the door when it comes to religion. I would argue, well, I don't exactly want to say it like this, but I feel like it's kind of the opposite when you don't automatically take the apologetic answer and instead you want to look further into it and you want to actually like take time, dig deep and think about it, even though it could destroy your entire worldview, your entire belief system. That's not an easy, simple thing for people to do. Oh, I don't believe anymore. Time to move on. Like, for a lot of people, including myself, it was freaking stressful. It was stressful to be like, I really don't accept this answer. Oh my God, I'm scared. Like, what's gonna come next? I remember feeling that way. Like, this doesn't convince me. This seems like a terrible answer. Like, yeah, I wish I could just shut my brain off sometimes. No, not really. I'm glad to be at the spot I am now, but you know what I mean. Like, that's a hard process. For some people, like at that exact moment, it would have been easier to check your brain at the door, but we weren't doing that. That's how we came here. And I'm not claiming that like, oh, I'm so much smarter than he is, or I'm so much smarter than Christians, but to say we weren't using our brains is quite literally the opposite of what was going on. Anyways, I thought that was a good thing to react to because it gives me an opportunity to talk about why I even make this content